got some new parts for the truck. Actually, all around I've got shocks and new springs and shocks for the front. I also still have those Chevy Leaf springs that I am oh so itching to put on this truck, but first things first, we need to get the shocks on, do the front springs, and then we can line up the appointment to go get the used Chevy 63 Leaf springs with new hangers onto the back end of the truck. So today, I'm gonna install these. Should be pretty easy. I figure we'll start with the back. Shouldn't even need to jack up the truck. We'll just pull the old ones off, replace with new ones. Before anything else, here's the part numbers for the rear shocks that I got. These are Bilstein 1500s, and right there, part numbers. Jot them down if you need them. Underneath the truck right now, we have some very, very used Rancho shocks that are definitely needing to be replaced. That used to be white. It's now covered in rust. It's got a zip tie that used to hang on that boot. They're absolutely shot. So I'm gonna pull these ones off and put these brand spanking new ones on. So conveniently, I can kind of just sit myself underneath here. They're both 17 mil, and I already hit them with some WD-40. I recommend doing so, some PB Blaster, something along those lines. I have a feeling these are gonna be on there pretty snug, which they are. I gotta get a breaker bar. Oh. Just need a little extra leverage, not much. Okay, get the top one. Not too bad. I think I gotta loosen the top more. There we go. Let's see if we can pull this off. There we are. I'm gonna keep this orientation the same with the bolts. So this was the top, came off just like that. So I got the old shocks off, and then I've got the new ones side by side. And I wanna show you real quick. First of all, the last owner had the longer shock on the driver's side and the shorter shock on the passenger side. I'm currently trying to figure out if that's the correct orientation before I put these ones on. Another thing is, I was looking at the Bilstein website, and it says, even though the last owner had the boots up top with the rod, it says Bilstein says whichever way they mount their sticker determines the orientation. So the boot in this case is actually going to go on the bottom, which makes sense because it's got the drain holes to allow any debris or water, moisture that collects in there to run out. But check this out. Here's the longer Bilstein. Pops right back out. Here's the longer Rancho shock. Nothing. That just stays like that. So yeah, definitely time to do these shocks. My stock Leaf springs will probably appreciate it. So funny thing is, I ended up doing the rear shocks 3 times. The first time I forgot to put the inner washers on. The second time I realized that the longer shock does not go on the driver's side. So I ended up having to take them back off again, swap them, and put the longer shock on the passenger side. I spent probably a couple hours researching this topic on the internet. I even asked you guys on Instagram. Most of you, if not all of you, said that the longer shock goes on the driver's side. But Bilstein and old forum posts for the first gen Tacoma all indicate that it goes on the passenger side. And I'm gonna go with Bilstein's part numbers, and they claim that the longer shock goes on passenger, so that's how I did it. And now, as you can see, we've got this first gen Tacoma flotation vehicle here, hovercraft mode if you will. I've got the wheels off, jacked up in the front, and we're gonna go ahead and start on the front coils and shocks. I'm gonna start on the passenger side just because, who knows, it might be a little easier. I'm gonna take off that bolt that goes through the lower shock and then, or the lower shock mount, and then I'm gonna take off these guys. I think they're 14 mils right up top here. I wanna say 14 mil bolts. And by the way, I measured out how high the truck sat before. It's about 40 inches, 41 inches from floor to the edge of the fender. And if you notice, I think these are stock shocks and springs, but they do have that like 1-inch spacer thing going on in there. So we'll have to compare once we get the new ones in. .101, 101 foot-pounds torque on the bottom bolt and 47 foot-pounds for these top ones. I couldn't get a torque wrench on one of them, so I just went pretty darn tight, and everything else is down to torque spec. This lower bolt was kind of a pain to get in. Took a lot of prying with the pry bar to get the bolt aligned with the holes to get the bolt to go through. But passenger side is done. I'm gonna put the tire back on, drop this side, and knock out the driver. After driving the truck for a few days, it drives substantially better. It bounces way less, and the drivability is far better. Also, the rear seems to have, or maybe the front, I don't know, the front seems to have gotten taller. Beyond, after I installed the front shocks, I don't know, I just feel like it somehow decompressed, or yeah, whatever the term is. Feels like it got taller, and today we're gonna make it even taller. Because I'm gonna be putting the Chevy leaf springs on the rear, I need to have the front ready to go as far as where I want it for the height. And I bought these Bilstein shocks pre-built, so when they came to me, they were put on, I think, not the lowest, but maybe the second to lowest setting. And we're gonna be raising them up, extending them. I have some spring compressors that I've rented. It's gonna be fun. Really excited to do this job all over again, and next time with even longer shocks. So here's the new problem. I've got the driver's side shock out. Went to put on the spring compressor so that way I can get it held where it is and then remove the top nut so that way it doesn't explode. Spring compressor doesn't fit. So yeah, I'm wondering if now it might just be easier to pay a shop who can do this in probably 10 minutes without having to use this tool. Wonder if that's the better way to do this, is maybe I just pull off both passenger and driver and give it to them, have them get a look at the truck too before they do the Chevy leaf springs, because I'll be taking it to the same shop. So sometimes it just doesn't work out. So I think I'm deciding that these spring compressors I'm no longer renting, I'm going to own them. So that's how this works. If you don't bring them back, you just basically you've bought them. So I can't fit these in here. So I'm gonna take a grinder and trim off just a little bit of this to allow me, because I can almost slip one side in. I don't know how I did it before, but like that. See, like it's almost enough. So I'm only gonna trim out a little bit, but I have to do each one of these clamps. And basically I'll have some modified spring compressors. But that way, I was thinking I could take this to a shop, but they're gonna charge me probably what it would cost me to own these, to basically rebuild these. So I think better to have spring compressors. Driver's side is back on. It actually went on fairly easily. For some reason, it didn't seem like it was any longer, but I totally don't understand the metrics and the mathematics of how this shock totally works and where the lift comes from. So I was assuming that the strut itself was going to be a little bit longer. Perhaps it was, but it actually went on just about as smoothly. And I'm talking about getting that bottom bolt in down there. That's always the hard part. But now we are ready to go here on the driver's side. I'm going to go ahead and leave the tire off and do the passenger side, and then I'll put both the tires back on once we're all good to go. So unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to get you guys a shot of the truck after I had finished lifting up the Bilstein suspension up front and reinstalling it. So here's a couple photos of the truck and how it looks after I got the shocks raised up. However, you may notice that there's a little blurry segment on top of the truck, and I'm blurring that out because I'm very excited to announce that one in the next video. So stay tuned for that little Easter egg for you. The truck probably sits about 3 inches taller than stock in the front now, keeping in mind that the last owner had that little maybe even 1.5 inch rubber spacer on the top of the stock shock. So if it was not there, then it would probably be a nice 3-inch difference that we see. However, it's about 1.5 inch difference from that rubber spacer and that stock setup compared to the Bilstein setup. So overall, I would say it's about a 3-inch lift. Pretty happy with it. The truck is now over at the shop getting the Chevy 63 leaf springs put on and new hangers welded in. The shop did call me yesterday with some not unfortunate news, but we're gonna have to switch directions here a bit. The shocks that I put on 3 times actually are being taken off because they're not going to work. They're actually not quite long enough for the flex that the Chevy Leafs provide. So they're actually set up for a first-gen Tacoma with a 1 to 3 inch lift. Be perfect if you guys are running like the Dakar Leaf Pack or something along those lines. I am selling those shocks. They're practically brand new. If you guys are interested in them, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm also selling the rear upper shock relocation kit that I bought. The shop said that it's not really going to work for my application. It would actually just be easier to use the factory upper shock mounts, but they will have to order lower shock mounts, which they're going to weld on to the axle. So I'll probably get the truck back late next week. So I will have a full walk around video of all of their work, what they put into it, the craftsmanship of their welding, and we'll deep dive into the Chevy Leafs and how that looks fully set up, as well as how the truck sits and drives with the fully new suspension. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, comments below. Love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Keep elevating. Adios.